Good evening and welcome to October's live stream. Tonight we're going to focus specifically on program timescales and what we've got left to do to get you into your HX50.
Before the final push on any major development program, it's often good practice to take a little look back and see just how far you've come in a very short period of time.
Starting literally from a blank sheet of paper, we listened to what the market wanted and sketched out the concept for a next generation 5-seat helicopter.
Soon that sketch became a wind tunnel model. The wind tunnel model became an engineering design. The engineering design became an aircraft, and the aircraft is becoming an icon for what the future of GA looks like. To deliver the performance that HX50 demands and the price correction that the GA market so desperately needed, we've had to develop the first all-new light helicopter gas turbine engine developed since the 1980s. Our advanced digital cockpit brings an all-new ecosystem to VFR helicopter flying, fusing the very best characteristics of traditional analog gauges with all of the enhancements of modern digital displays. Every aircraft has stability augmentation and advanced autopilot features as standard, and our active safety management system, which manages the status and health of the aircraft and also the performance of the pilot, is delivered through the Hill app. Clearly, to do these things, we've had to build an incredible team. We've combed the global aerospace industry looking for the best and brightest minds and pulled together a multinational, world-class team of specialists and engineers. To put this in perspective, if you were to take all the people in the world that really know about designing helicopters and developing gas turbine engines, you would be able to fit them all in a single cinema theatre. Okay, so the problem you've got is to get these people. They've all already got great jobs, they've already got established lives, and you've got to develop and evolve your own business to a point where you can attract these people to a better proposition with yourself. Now, however improbable that might sound, we've done it. We've built that team. It's always been a crucial part of our strategy to be a vertically integrated manufacturer. It's essential as an aircraft company that you make the components that you design and you don't just become a technology company. The scale and the extent of vertical integration that's been necessary to achieve our objectives has grown significantly during the program, and as a result of that, so has the facilities that have been necessary to do that work. We started development from a modest design office, very quickly grew to a first development center that handled precision machining and metal components, and then grew DC2 and DC3 to handle composites, patterns and molds. And then far earlier than intended, we've had to move here to Production Center 1, a 76,000 square foot, fully functioning production facility capable of delivering every component within the aircraft and engine under one roof. Now that is an incredibly complicated and demanding project in its own right. And as big and as difficult as that sounds, we've done it. Let's talk about development timescales. The challenge with any development program is the fact that it's not possible to know upfront every last detail of everything that you're going to have to do in the program, nor is it possible to predict every development challenge that you're going to encounter while you develop the program. You can certainly outline all of the key procedural steps that you're going to take to do the work, and you can make rational, reasonable, experience-based judgments on what a reasonable contingency is to cope with the things that might likely go wrong or might likely need some more attention as you go through that process. The reality is, however, that in every real development program, there will be things that you just didn't anticipate, things that you couldn't have expected, or things that are just a consequence of things that you've done along the way. And for that reason, it's a normal part of any development process to essentially have to periodically review the status of the program, look at where you are against where you need to be, and then to periodically update the timescales. And that's where we are now. There are two primary factors that have dominated the consumption of the available slack in our development timescales. Firstly, the extent of in-house manufacturing that we've had to go to control cost, quality and timescales has increased constantly throughout the development program. This has consumed far more development time and far more resources than we'd budgeted for in the original project plan. Things like developing gears and bearings and precision superalloy fabrications, castings, both in commodity materials and also superalloys, and then the development of in-house patterns and composite molds. All of these things are areas where we've increased the scope of the project, and this has unfortunately had an impact on the time it takes to complete everything that we need to get our beautiful helicopter into the air. Delivering all of that additional vertical integration has required vast amounts more space, and so we've essentially had to bring forwards the development of PC-1, an activity that wasn't planned until after first flight, in order to be able to complete the development and produce all of these components. The second effect to this is the fact that because we were bringing together all three development centres into Production Centre 1, we've essentially had to take our production capability offline to be able to take on a new building, build all of the huge infrastructure that's necessary to do all of these things under one roof before we can recommission it and get going again with producing the components, the test rigs, the test equipment, and ultimately aircraft and engines. To put that in perspective for you, in just one instance of the many we've had to deal with, we took our precision machine shop offline in April to prepare for the move of all of the temperature management equipment and then ultimately moving the machines. It's now the 16th of October, and this is the first opportunity we've had to finish the alignment of the CNC machines for the ultra precision components that we have to make here. While we've had to do it a little earlier than planned, what we've achieved here at PC-1 is nothing short of spectacular. We've installed all the engineering services necessary for production throughout the building. Lots of power. We've built the development suite. We've built conference and meeting rooms, customer reception facilities, constructed all of the specialist machinery foundations, installed all of our existing production equipment, installed a range of specialist lifting equipment, installed a dust-tight pattern and trim facility, installed a state-of-art pattern machining facility, developed a state-of-art metrology lab right here in the machine shop, installed a precision laser welding facility, installed a large-scale composite curing facility, a full aircraft paint facility, and installed a digital production control facility. We're now well underway with the construction of our glazing production facility. The structure for the mechanical assembly shop is now built and awaiting the internal furnishings, as is the trim shop just at the end of this corridor. We've now also completed the structure for the avionics assembly and test cell, the electrical assembly and test cell, and right at the end of this area, we've also built the wiring loom assembly and test facility. We've built and installed a secure parts storage area. The final piece in the puzzle is then the composites clean room that will allow us to build airworthy composites for the flying prototypes and beyond. The balance of space on the shop floor down there will then be used for the larger assembly tasks and also for the range of test equipment and rigs we'll need to qualify each of the components on the ground prior to flight. With this amazing new facility finally coming together, this will propel us through the remainder of development and then into production seamlessly. The fact remains, however, that in the original project plan, we really never contemplated having to spend this much time and effort building this facility at this stage in the program. It was always intended to be after first flight while we were going through the approvals process. So with the balance of PC-1 construction and commissioning complete by the end of this year and the full facility being fully operational, we can look forward to an amazing 12 months ahead of us, getting back to the business of producing prototype components, building test rigs and equipment, commissioning them, and then testing subsystems, doing ground testing, and ultimately flight testing. With the factory build now almost behind us, we have an amazingly exciting period to look forwards to. The starter generator is here and built The test rig is on its way to us. It's finally cleared customs in Poland and is due to arrive any day now. At that point, we can finally do the starter generator testing, the motor generator control unit testing, and all of the associated control algorithm testing. In addition to that, we've completed the design of the speed reduction gearbox test rig. Much of the bought out equipment for that is here on the shop floor, and we're currently building the rig itself. The first of the intentionally airworthy speed reduction gearboxes for the engines are also being built at the moment, and we expect to be able to start testing those very early in the new year. That's the first 2 modules of this 4-module engine. By the end of Q4 2024, we'll have carried out the starter generator system test along with all of the associated power electronics. We'll have also tested the full avionics system along with the finalised HX50 digital cockpit user interface. In Q1 2025, we'll carry out the drivetrain test for the GT50 engine, the cabin crew seat crash test, and also the electrical system test. In Q2 2025, we'll carry out the gas generator module test, the power turbine module test, and then the first full GT50 run. On the aircraft program, we'll carry out the undercarriage testing on both skids and wheels, and also the flight control testing. In Q3 2025, we'll carry out the first full engine test along with the certification endurance test. On the aircraft program, we'll carry out the airframe testing, the fuel system testing, and the rotor system testing. In Q4 2025, we'll carry out aircraft drivetrain testing, ground runs, and then first flight. So with the information we now have at hand, we can update the key program dates as follows. GT50 will run for the first time on Friday, the 28th of June 2025. The first flight of HX50 is scheduled for Friday, the 20th of December 2025, and HX50 production will start on Monday, the 7th of December 2026. For most people, the single biggest barrier to entry into service for HX50 has always been its dependence on the GT50 engine. Those barriers will be profoundly eliminated when GT50 passes its certification endurance test for the first time. To celebrate that event, we'll be holding the 4th Hill Global Meetup and Discover event for Hill clients here at PC1 on the 11th of September 2025. At that event, you'll be able to see GT50 running in public for the first time. You'll be able to see all of the primary systems for HX50 on the test bench, and you'll be able to celebrate with us as we make the final push to first flight on December the 20th. The little dream of building a better helicopter has turned into a massive reality. We've crafted the helicopter that we all want, and to do so we've had to solve a plethora of complicated technical and commercial problems. We've had to vertically integrate an entire aviation supply chain to be able to simultaneously deliver on the cost, the quality and the timescales necessary to bring HX50 into service. And now we've had to develop an enormous production facility capable of delivering every single part required for both the aircraft and the engine, all under one roof. This process has taken a little bit longer than we wanted it to, but it's an extremely complicated process that has to be done perfectly. The team are doing an utterly amazing job, and we have an amazing 12 months to look forward to as we bring each part of the aircraft and engine to life for the first time, culminating in that first full engine run on the 28th of June and that first flight on December the 20th, 2025. Thank you for the trust that you've placed in us to deliver this aircraft. Thank you for your support during the development program to date. And now it's time for some questions.
Fantastic. Jason, thank you so much for taking the time out of your very busy schedule to give us an incredible update of where things are in the program. It's always amazing to look back and see where we've actually come from in such a short amount of time, like you said during the presentation. Really neat to see how PC1 has come along, how it's been built out now, and how we're ready to move to that next phase. Like you say, that next 12 months is going to be a very exciting time. We have questions coming in from everybody. This is the time for AMA, so ask me anything. Nothing is off bounds, so you can ask anything you want to Jason, and he's going to be more than happy to answer it to the best of his ability today. So make sure you keep putting all those questions in the chat, and then we're going to pose those to Jason right now. Jason, the first one is about the certification process. So because of the fact that the helicopter is 51% built, making an amateur-built aircraft, does that mean with the FAA, Part 21, it's going to be considered a Part 21 aircraft? Do you want to talk a little bit about that process?
Yeah, the fundamental philosophy of HX50, the whole program, is that it's really a fusion of the best parts of two separate worlds. So in one respect, it's designed from the ground up to be fully compliant with the latest Part 27 airworthiness regulations for the aircraft, and then Part E for Europe, or Part 33 for the US in terms of the engine. And then we take an aircraft that's fully compliant with that and then deliver it through the experimental airworthiness category in order to be able to involve owners into the build of the aircraft, to be able to essentially benefit from the increased knowledge that they'll get by being involved in the build, seeing how the systems go together, making sure they fully understand everything to become better owner operators. So it is essentially a fusion of the two, but it does go in under the experimental category in the US.
Okay.
All right, second question is coming from Nine, and he's asking about AI. How has AI positively impacted the Hill HX50 and the business? And as it has been, and how is it that it's been leveraged through AI? So the question is about AI and any integration of AI, and what are the plans of Hill Helicopters about AI?
So at the moment, other than the sort of way that AI is working its way into all engineering processes and lots of software solutions and all areas of our life, we haven't directly used AI in the development of the product or in any of its systems. Aerospace is generally a very conservative industry, and the certification of software is a relatively complicated thing to do at the best of times. So at the moment, there's very limited involvement of AI. We're very focused on just getting the job done and delivered, but we're always looking to the future. So as the technology continues to develop, we'll consider how we can apply it to best use.
Okay. Excellent. And from Henrik, he's asking about the certification process. So how is the certification process developing as we stand today?
So the certification process is multi-layered. Fundamentally, the whole thing starts with the approval of the organization. So we have to become a design-approved organization. We have to get a production approval so that we're qualified to produce aerospace quality parts. We need flight test approvals, and then later we'll need maintenance approvals and so on. So the organization has a number of approvals that we're in the process of. All of the draft documentation for those approvals has been prepared. The DOA, for example, has been reviewed by the CAA, and then we're in the process of going through the approvals process with the UK Civil Aviation Authority. Now, with an organisation that's essentially doing this for the first time, there's somewhat of a chicken and egg situation where they use the evidence from what we create to justify our competence to create it. And you find that, as in the case of some of the recent new aircraft companies, you'll find they get their DOA almost the day before they get their type certificate or their various approvals, because the two are grouped together. So it's a continuous process throughout the development, but you only really get your certificates towards the end of that. So that's the organizational approvals. And then we have a very intelligent way of carrying out the aircraft type approval. So essentially we're designing a machine that's fully compliant to Part 27. So both the permit to fly aircraft and also the full type certified aircraft is essentially showing compliance with the whole Amendment 10 of Part 27 of the standard category rotorcraft code. So we're developing all of the compliance materials for that, carrying out the testing, writing the reports, getting the testing supervised by the various authorities, initially in the UK, and then we'll follow that up around the world as it happens. And the amount of that material that's required for the permit aircraft, in terms of, not in terms of what we do, but in terms of what the authorities audit, is proportionately less. So we get through that process relatively quickly, and then the full type certificate process takes that period a little bit longer. And then the same is basically true of the engine. The engine will essentially go through a full type approval process right from day one. And again, once we've met the necessary requirements for it to be used in the permit aircraft, it will be given its type approval for that application. It will essentially be bundled with the permit aircraft, and then the full longer term testing that's required, well, not longer term testing, the longer term validation of the materials that we provide to the authorities will go on a little bit longer after that. So all of those activities are going on at the moment. We have an incredibly supportive Home Aviation Authority, and we're going to be working increasingly closely with them over the coming weeks and months. But again, a lot of these things are chicken and egg. You have to be in the position to make good use out of their time and be in a position to give them the information, the documentation, the evidence that they need before you can do anything meaningful with them. So we've done all of the structural things that we need to do, and now it's essentially them waiting for us to start giving them the documentation that they need to be able to execute on the approvals plan.
Fantastic. And Robert is asking about the capacity of production. How many units are you planning to produce per year?
Okay, so again, at this stage, that's a complicated question, but the simple answer is year one, production targets haven't changed. It's 450 in year one, 675 in year two, and 1,000 in year three, as we ramp towards our long-term estimated demand and capacity. The exact details of that ramp rate on the start will come out over the coming years as we finish building the first one of these, and we have all the necessary information to develop and plan that properly. So I would say, as I've said all along, that production capacity will be adjusted according to demand. So as long as the sales keep coming in at the rate that they are, we will continue to review whether or not it's appropriate to upscale the production volumes. But all of this will be addressed in due course.
Excellent. Morven is asking, what about the blades? Are you making the blades in-house as well?
Yeah, we absolutely are. We're all over that at the moment. So we've focused this Q&A very much on the elephant in the room, and there's a pile of technical stuff that I haven't presented here today that will start feeding out onto the app and feeding out through the YouTube channel to top this up. Fundamentally, we have a very detailed development program going on the blades, and we'll be making the first composite rotor blades for structural testing early in the new year. So yeah, there's a lot of work going on that at the moment. It's really very exciting. I'm trying not to say something that I really don't want to say at the moment. Misha knows what I'm talking about.
Very exciting.
All right. Yeah, those exciting surprises will come in due time. And Nine is asking, when will the company's stock be available to be purchased?
So
wants to buy stock.
That's very kind. I'm determined to keep the company private. At the moment, myself and my wife own the entire company. We're very well financed. We're in an amazing financial position. We have a very robust financial model, so I don't expect that to happen. I've also said all along that if we ever did reach a point where we needed some scale-up finance to meet an ever-increasing demand, then we would look first to the customer base and the people that have supported us the most throughout the length of this journey to help to give them the opportunity to benefit from what we're doing. So there is no plans to float. There is no plans to do an equity raise anytime soon. We're in a good position.
Excellent. And Jack is asking, is only the buyer permitted to come out for the build of the aircraft, or can they bring a certified mechanic to gain familiarity on the airframe?
So from our point of view, we obviously provide mechanics training courses as part of the as part of the package with an aircraft purchase. So you'll be able to bring your mechanics to train here at the facility either while or separately from when you're building your aircraft. In terms of how many people can contribute, we've got an open query with the CAA about this at the moment because it's ambiguous how it's defined at the moment. Fundamentally, if you're a syndicated ownership, then there's a rationale that you could bring every member of the syndicate. There's also a rationale that you could just use one. And so we're going to provide some much more tight guidelines on that once we've fully agreed it with the CAA. So we're looking at that at the moment, but we expect, as with everything else, that they'll be entirely rational with it. The objective of this is that the people that have bought and will be operating the aircraft benefit from the knowledge that is gained by building it and being involved in that process. There's a clear positive safety benefit from doing that. So I don't imagine they will do anything to frustrate that process.
Perfect. And also the engineer has a free type course as well. So they can come for a 10-day type course, get certified on the aircraft, and get all the familiarity they need.
Yeah, it's in our interest to make sure that everybody that touches this aircraft in any way is properly trained and properly supported. And so we will make sure that everybody that needs the knowledge gets the knowledge, and that needs the support gets the support.
Jason, next question is, will you ever have distribution in the US?
At the moment, we've got a direct-to-market model, and that's working just great for us. We will always need service and support in the field, as we've said, and we'll be rolling that out later. We had planned to start looking at that seriously this year, but I think in reality we'll leave that most likely until after we've got first flight out of the way. So we will be looking for service and support centres, not just in the US but globally, and we're always keen to hear from people that do a good job in the helicopter industry as it stands at the moment. This product should benefit everybody that's involved in helicopters, not displace people that are doing a great job.
Excellent. Emma's asking, do you have firmware flight data parameters, forecast range and cruise speed at 5,000 feet, and what will be the initial maintenance schedule interval?
So the initial maintenance schedule is basically a 100-hour cycle. So the aircraft is a 5,000-hour TPO nose to tail with an on-condition calendar basis that's picked up as part of the annual inspection. And then, the flight performance. We do have more detailed information on flight performance. We're essentially ahead of all of our targets based on our latest predictions. So in terms of cruise speed and range, I'm quite happy for you to take the values that we've declared, which is if you fill the fuel tank up, it'll do 5 hours at 140 knots, and it'll do that all the way up to 10,000 feet.
All right, and Jason, at this stage, do you have an idea what will be the cost of insurance for our owner?
So again, that depends very much on their experience and where they are in the world. But in terms of the insurance for someone with, say, 500 hours here in the UK, that would be around £5,000 a year is what we're targeting. So very, very competitive by contemporary standards. And that's for multiple reasons. Firstly, we will be directly underwriting the hull value. So we can create an immediate delta there to drive down the underwriting costs. And then secondly, with all of the safety enhancements and the characteristics that are designed explicitly for private owner operators, then the aircraft presents a much lower risk profile than some traditional aircraft for use in these applications, which again drives down the premiums. Sorry, I should also manage that, as I referred to in the video, an integral part of the DigiCockpit is our active safety management system. And that's a system that essentially gamifies the pilot's performance. So it's constantly measuring and scoring how the pilot flies against the established norms, against the parameters that we define as safe approaches, landings. It's looking at the weather conditions and everything else that that the aircraft's being operated in, and to create a profile and a risk score for every operator. And that allows us essentially to intervene before a pattern of behaviour increases somebody's risk to the point that they're likely to have a mishap with an aircraft. So we're proactively managing private independent owner operators as would a chief pilot or a line pilot in a commercial operation, and we're doing that through the Hill app and the DigiCockpit. This is a holistic end-to-end way of managing the safety of operations of these aircraft in service wherever they are in the world.
Excellent. I love that. I just had a fun idea, Jason. You should do a sort of a free giveaway when the helicopters are in production and flying. For the person that has the best safety record, you give them maybe a free engine and overhaul or something like that.
Yeah. No, we've got I've got a friend that has recently bought a turboprop aircraft, and the manufacturer of that does something very similar, and him and his colleague are literally competing with each other to do the most perfect approach every time they take there. So it's not like it's been presented really well, and it's not like a black box on the dashboard of an 18-year-old's car. It's just that little monitor that's going to prick your conscience before patterns of behaviour that could lead to disaster become the norm for you. And so it's just to help people that wouldn't ordinarily have any supervision in the way that they operate the aircraft from developing potentially hazardous habits.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic because, you know, about 80% of accidents are typically done are caused by pilot error. So I think we have the ability to dramatically shift that, make a huge change in the future of general aviation, particularly for private pilots, and allowing the ability to monitor that and then provide that feedback. I think it's going to make a big shift. So I think that's really good. Next question is from Dr. Garrow, and he's asking, I actually really like this question because I think your answer is going to speak to the transparency of Hill, the open door policy that we have and have always had. And he's asking about when can we visit the facility? So maybe just talk a little bit about factory tours and so forth.
Yeah, the factory is now open for tours, so we generally try to keep the scheduled tours to a Wednesday, where you'll get to tour everything that's going on here. You'll see all the components being produced. You'll see the test rigs that we're developing at the moment. You get to see the aircraft, sit in it. The team will talk you through its features and functions, and Amy will walk you around and introduce you to all the guys that are contributing to the development of the program. We do sometimes offer ad hoc tours for people that are from overseas and in the country on business and just want to stop by and see things. We never promise that because obviously we've got to manage the flow of people through the factory, but generally we'll try and accommodate people whenever possible. So yeah, we put everything out there on the social media channels, and when you come here, and you're welcome to come here, you'll see exactly the same, but you'll get to meet some of the familiar faces.
Good.
All right, Andrew would like more details about the experience of the build school. Can you give us an estimation of roughly what's required for the owner for the build of the 51%? And will I be, for example, participating in the build of the engine? I don't think so, he says, but he wants clarification on that. And how many days should I book to stay there? So a little bit more of an overview of the build school experience.
Okay. So the build school experience is still in development, but the basic principle of it is that you'll need 2 full calendar weeks to come to the UK. and stay here. During that period, you're going to be involved in the build of every area of the aircraft. Now, in order to comply robustly with both the spirit and the letter of the law, there's a very specific checklist of things that you do need to be involved in and things that you don't need to be involved in. So you will be involved in laminating, you will be involved in creating the composite fuselage, but things like engines and transmissions and rotor blades and rotor heads, things like that, you don't technically need to be involved in them, but we will provide part of the program as not just a build school, but also an educational course. So you will be involved in the build of the engine, you will see how the transmission goes together and be part of that. All of the key systems that are safety critical, you will have exposure to during the course, but the actual physical labour content that you need to be involved in to qualify with the FAA checklists and the various other things that we have to do is very much focused on the areas of build and the areas of assembly that are specifically specified in that list. So you'll come out of this programme not only having built an aircraft to a really, really high standard, but also having a very deep knowledge and insight into what each of these bits and pieces do, how they go together, how they work, how they connect, and fundamentally, whether they're important or not. So you'll have all of that experience on the course. The other thing I should add to that, and it's the reason most people ask this question, is you don't need to have any prior helicopter building experience, okay? The whole point of this course is it welcomes people from a wide range of backgrounds. We provide all of the necessary training and support they need to execute very controlled tasks under very close supervision to the standards required to make a safe and reliable aircraft. So we welcome people of all ages, all backgrounds, all levels of capability, and you will be able to complete the course successfully.
Excellent. Lee is asking, he says, great job, Jason. His question is, how were you able to raise the funds to begin this project?
Well, that's a really long story. Essentially, I developed a lot of the early designs, a lot of the early work, a lot of the early concepts for what became HX50 over a sort of 10-year period, using the profits generated by my engineering company, Dynamic Engineering. We eventually got the program to a sufficiently developed state, and the business had become sufficiently successful that we could attract a £2 million Innovate UK government grant to allow us essentially to turn more of the staff onto working on the aircraft full time. So we did that over a 3-year period. We developed the aircraft then to a point that it was sufficiently developed and sufficiently credible that we were able to then start what we called at the time the Friends of the Founder, and what became the 100 Club program to start to invite people that felt that the helicopter industry and that general aviation could be better than it was at the time to come and join us and take reserve a position for one of the early production units, and I'm pleased to say that's grown into what the business is today. So in all honesty, it's been totally organically funded over many years, and then subsequently funded by the people that want to benefit from it the most. So yeah, it's a traditional ground up business done the hard way.
Fantastic. And Johan Johnson has a follow-up question on that, which is, should we worry about your exposure to financing given the timeline that you shared?
No, not at all. So, I mean, we're in an incredibly robust financial position at the moment. We have large cash reserves. We could run for a number of years with no further money in through the door whatsoever. And then on top of that, we're currently sitting on an order book that's approaching £650 million. So should we ever need to raise financing, then we're in a very strong position to go and do that on great terms. So as I shared earlier, I don't believe we'll need that. I don't want to do that. But as I've always said throughout this program, if I needed to, the delivery of this machine to our customers to the right standard is my top priority, and I would do that in a heartbeat to make sure that we're successful. So no, there's no need to worry. I'm hoping that I'm sat here not looking like a worried person, because I'm really not worried about this.
Very good.
Excellent. Very nice. And Andy's asking, will this helicopter have any Army Air Corps or military applications?
That's not for me to say. I've never been in either. So the helicopter is a cost-effective, high-performance, easy to automate platform. So who knows what the future applications will be. My personal view is that there is so much demand, untapped demand available in the civil market, that I don't think military contracts would be very interesting to us. But the door is always open. If people are interested in what we're doing, we're happy to talk to them. But my primary focus is making simple, cost-effective, efficient, reliable light aircraft for the civil market, and making general aviation and light commercial aviation, GVTOL as we called it back in Duxford, everything that I know it can be.
All right, and Barry has another question, and it has been partially answered, but there's a little bit of that the follow-up which can complete. And the question is, planned number of units to be produced in the first 12 months. You have addressed that, but maybe connected with the second part, which is, what is the anticipated date for HC50 initial production?
So we've always said that HC50 will follow around 2 years after the start of HX50's production. Now, in terms of production capacity, it's essentially the same production line, it's essentially the same factory that produces it. So there's no infrastructure, no major infrastructure requirements on us to put C50 into production. That's purely down to how quickly we can expedite the full certification program and then push that around the world. We've got an extremely supportive domestic regulator. You genuinely couldn't ask for any more than what's been done and offered to us at the moment. So I suspect, as long as we do everything that we're supposed to do properly and in a timely manner, we'll be able to expedite the initial type certification here in the UK relatively quickly. And then again, the moment that basis for approval is agreed, we'll be pushing that around the world for all of the validations and the parallel certifications that are required. So it's really a certification program question, not a how quickly can you make them question.
Right. The next one is a good technical engineering question, so get your engineering hat on, Jace. It says, what DO-178C level is the FADEC being engineered to?
B.
B.
Yeah, Del B.
Okay. Easy answer. All right.
Okay, and there's a fun question here. I think there's a fun question here, which is from Jim. He says, "Congratulations, the entire team should feel proud. I just know about the dates, and since in the U.S. these two dates are kind of special: 9/11, terrorist attack, and December 7th, which I didn't know was the Pearl Harbor attack. Should you consider changing these dates?" And I think I just realized actually they're kind of iconic, right? So I think that the bad could be turned into good. So
Yeah.
don't be superstitious, but we can remember these dates in a positive way, right?
Yeah.
So you want to comment on that, Jason?
Yeah, well, thank you for the feedback. That's the naive Brit that obviously hasn't spent enough time in the US there. So the 9/11 date, I obviously recognise what that one was, but we've been arguing about that date for ages, trying to find one that everybody could do. So that kind of just happened on that day, because between everything else we've got going on, it was the only one we could find that worked for everyone. So yeah, we'll look at that. But yeah, I'm sorry if that's caused any offence.
But it's going to be actually very positive, Jason. It's going to turn around those dates to be. I think the question was kind of a little bit a funny question, but obviously one that has some connotations that could be remembered positively, and that's going to be a good mission for HALE for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right, the next question is from Carl. It says, where will you be able to service the HX50 for Indonesian buyers? Do you have service planned out already in Asia? This is a good question. I think that you could just generalize to the world as well.
Essentially, we are happy to work with anybody in the territory that offers helicopter service and support at the moment. So we will be accepting applications for service centres again in around a year's time, I expect. At the moment we simply don't have the bandwidth to do anything meaningful with it, and we have some very particular ideas about the way we want to deliver the service and the infrastructure and qualifications that we'd expect from these organisations. Anywhere that there is a HX50 on planet Earth, we will make sure that there is access to local service so that the owners can have all of the support that they deserve to operate with freedom. So Indonesia, I'm not actually sure if we've got anybody there yet. Have we got any customers in Indonesia?
We do have clients. We do?
Yes.
Yeah.
So there will certainly be support out there as well. But as I say, at the moment, my mind is very much with PC1 and the development program. It will turn very much to supporting these machines as this part of the program closes out. So we'll make sure there's people there for you.
Good.
All right. Tim has a very interesting question. What is the main work that's going to be done between first flight and start of production?
There's lots and lots and lots of work that's got to be done between first flight and production. So first flight is not the end of the airworthiness process. It's really just the beginning. So as you go through, your first flight is a very tentative, get the thing off the ground. You've then got to go through envelope expansion, load surveys, and then we've got to carry out a whole range of operational and functional flight testing to basically probe every little characteristic of the aircraft, of its loads, of its operating duty and envelopes. Those loads then come back and get processed, and then we have to carry out a huge range of testing on every single system of the aircraft back on the ground on test rigs to establish the TBO lives for each of the components, the maintenance procedures, the inspection procedures, absolutely everything that we need to be able to qualify what it's going to take to keep this aircraft airworthy throughout its entire life. In parallel with that, having built up the experience of building conforming parts for each element of the aircraft and the engine, we've then got to optimize those processes for production. We've then got to complete the detailed design of the manufacturing facility, the manufacturing system layout, all of the manufacturing control systems. We've then got to essentially scale the facilities up to cope with the demand that we will readdress at that point once we've passed all of these major milestones. And then once we've done that, as we're running the parallel approvals processes in the 80 countries or so that we've sold these machines in, we'll start to scale up the production facility, develop the final details of the build school, the maintenance program, the flight test program, and then with a few other things as well, you'd be ready to start production with all the approvals in hand.
Okay,
that's obviously a whistle-stop tour of it all. There's much more to it than that.
All in all, a fairly busy year then, so that's good.
They're all busy years.
Daniel's got a question that says, as a program manager, I always look for contingency, time versus money, based on risk to be included within the milestones or date planning. With much testing and unknown risk ahead, how much contingency has been included within the milestone schedule presented that you presented today?
Not a great deal is the honest answer. What we've done is we've planned what we consider to be a realistic timescale. We're going to communicate everything that we do really, really transparently. And then essentially beyond that, we have to react to what happens along the way. With a program as big and complicated as this, no matter what your contingency you include, it'll be wrong. So we're confident that we can hit the deadlines for the next 12 to 14 month period that I've outlined. There is a small amount of contingency in there that's consistent with what we've assumed throughout the program. And we now have a very narrow window and a task that's much easier and clearer to define than it ever has been before. So I have a good degree of confidence we'll hit those deadlines. But it is a complicated project.
All right, next one is from Robalina, and she's asking, does the HS-50 have an emergency button to press in case of engine failure? This button should make the autopilot land the helicopter automatically. So I think she's talking about auto rotation in case that is required, if there's any automation auto rotation.
If you opted for the 4-axis autopilot, then it does have the capability as standard to put you into an auto rotation. So it will enter an auto rotation, it will maintain your RPM in the glide, but then the bottom of the auto rotation is still down to the pilot. You'll still need to find a site, you'll still need to flare, and you'll still need to cushion the landing at the bottom. There are also plans for a take me home feature, but that absolutely won't be available for a few years. We've got to get the basic aircraft done first. The key to the 4-axis autopilot, and why I'm such a big advocate of it, is because it puts all of the key hardware on the platform. So we have huge capability to be able to add more capability and add more functionality, largely with software alone down the road. So it will do a lot to protect you, but it can't take you all the way to the ground just yet.
Excellent. And Julianne has a really good question that probably we can do a little closer to when production starts, but maybe not yet, but I'll let you answer that. So it says, knowing the key dates and also knowing the ramp up of production and the numbers of aircraft to be produced in a year, I believe all of us would love to have a schedule of when each serial number would be delivered, so which month of the year. This would allow us to plan financially, as well as to set aside the time to go over to the UK for the production of his or her unit for the ground school portion.
So my view of that is that it would be providing an artificial level of accuracy to try and do that right at the moment. But we can give you a rough idea if it's purely for financial planning, but I don't want to infer that we can predict down to a day what's going to happen right at the end of what we've got to do over the next 14 months. I think that'd be unrealistic, and I certainly wouldn't want people booking their flights just yet. So if it's just for financial planning, sure, we can give you an indication of what the target dates that we're working to are internally. We'll share those and we can update those as we go. But if you're going to get all excited and book flights, then I'd rather we just leave that until we can say it absolutely accurately.
I think the question was probably more focused on the financial planning side.
Yeah,
there's been clients that have been asking this question. It's not sure it's going to happen, and as you just said, a little bit closer during the year, probably 2025, that could be shared, right, Jason?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so Jeremy Parkin is asking the following question. Where will the first flight take place? Will you be building a flight test facility there?
So we have ground running facilities here, and we have a number of airports close to us. So I haven't decided where the first formal flight will take place yet, but the ground running will almost certainly take place here at PC1.
Okay, excellent. And Nick is asking, any thoughts on Skyrise and their easy control system that they have?
I think what they've done is absolutely amazing. I think making helicopters easier and safer to fly and taking the workload out of flying is crucial to the next chapter in general aviation, and this is why we're all over it with the digital cockpit, with the 2-axis and the 4-axis autopilot systems. I love flying helicopters, I love stick flying helicopters, but whenever I'm flying I've almost always got the autopilot on when we're in the cruise. So I think what they do is amazing. I think from my point of view, if my understanding of their price point is correct, it just won't work for GA. It's just too expensive. I don't understand the application for it at its current price point. If that was to drop profoundly, then we could be very interested, and I think it is an amazing piece of capability. I think they're an amazing company, but the fact is GA is too expensive, and until we get control of it, GA can't thrive, and it doesn't matter how much capability you add in, if the core platform is limited on speed and payload and performance and maintenance costs, anything you do to make it more expensive, it just makes that situation worse. So I love what they've done. I love the idea of what they do. I wholeheartedly agree with all of it. But it's only interesting to me if the price point works for my customers.
Clear enough. And James is asking for a little bit more clarity on the following. What is the difference and what is to be expected for the following stages from the point of view of the client experience? So first of all, the flying and learning course, so the type rating of those 5 hours, then the building and the finishing of the aircraft, then the picking up the aircraft and taking it home. So what details could give us on the timeline I should expect between all these phases, and when do they come due?
Okay, I think for almost all customers, the type rating will be done in advance of the build school, simply because people will be excited, they'll want to get into one of our fleet aircraft as early as possible. So we'll offer a type rating course here in the UK from our production centre, or our flight ops centre, depending on what's appropriate at the time. People will be welcomed here, and they will be taken through a comprehensive training course. This is, of course, assuming they've already got a helicopter licence. So the type rating picks up from the point that you've already got a helicopter licence, and will just teach you all of the specifics about HX50, GT50, how you fly it, how you operate it, and all of those matters. So it's a comprehensive program of ground school and flight training that will teach you to operate your own aircraft safely and to enjoy everything that it offers. The build school is totally different. So the build school is the process where you'll come to the factory and be involved in the construction of your very own aircraft. You'll be involved in the manufacture of all of the key parts. You'll be involved in the assembly of the aircraft. You'll be involved in various training classes that take you through the details of how the transmission system works, how the rotor system works, how the drivetrain, the undercarriage, the fuel system, the electrical system works, and flight controls and all these things, so that you've got a comprehensive knowledge about all of the inner workings of your machine, and during that period you will complete the construction of your own machine to the point that it's ready to be flight tested by our flight test department. And then in terms of the delivery of your aircraft, at the end of the construction phase, it can either be disassembled and crated, ready for shipping, and then it can be essentially delivered to our goods outward facility for you to make arrangements for onward shipping, or for people that are suitably qualified and able, then there are some criteria for that. We can also allow people to pick their aircraft up from the facility directly and fly it away. But as I've said, there'll be criteria for that.
Excellent. Carl has a really good question. I can answer, I think, some of it, but he says, what is the slot availability for HX50? What's the ordering process? And when would the expected delivery dates be? So right now, for the HX50, the next serial number that's available is 946. Estimated delivery for that right now, because of the order book that we have, would be in 2028. And the ordering process is very simple. We can send you an email with a link for that. One of the best things to do, if you haven't done it already, and we encourage anybody that would like to learn more about the aircraft and also have the possibility to order. Ruben and I do daily presentations. You can book those on the Hill Helicopters website. And so we do a live presentation, and it takes about a half an hour to go through all the different details of the aircraft and the program and the opportunities that we have available right now. The aircraft is still discounted, so you can still lock in discounted pricing at the moment. And so you can go through one of those presentations. We follow up with an email right after that, and that gives a live link. So you can go and check that link anytime you want with the available stock at the price that's available at that time. And that's something that's updated as we go along the program, because that discount is fading away with time as we get now closer and closer to production. So I think that probably answers that one. Ruben, you can take the next if you want.
All right, next one is an easy one as well. We have gone through that on the last AMA, but just as a reminder, the question is progress on the Microsoft Flight Simulator. So we shared that we are aiming for Q1 next year. okay, for the flight simulator, Microsoft Simulator with the HS50. The question for you, Jason, is please remind us of the payment schedule. I believe it was somewhat waiting first flight for the second deposit to be called. Is that correct? So remind us on the when you think
so
you're going to be calling.
the payment structure is there's a deposit at the point of order, and then there's what we call a manufacturing payment, which is 12 months before the production of your individual slot, and then an assembly payment, which is 3 months before the production of your individual slot. And we've said all along that we won't call any of those payments until two criteria are fulfilled. The first one, we have a factory, and the second one, the helicopter's successfully made its first flight, because those are the two conditions that you simply cannot be closer than 12 months to production without fulfilling both of those things. So no payments will be called until the wheels are off the ground.
Okay, so you are pretty much estimating for people to be prepared, there will be end of the year next year, right?
Yeah, end of 25
That will possibly
at the
happen.
earliest. Yeah.
Mhm. Okay, excellent. Next question is, when will it be possible to fly the HX50 in France?
Yes, it will.
When will it?
When
That's
will
the
it?
question.
Well, yeah, we can take one of ours over as soon as we've got our prototype permits approved. So yeah, we can do that relatively soon. Get the initial type approvals, and we can do some demonstration flights over there. In terms of early HX50s, we've got a number of early French customers. I can't remember what the serial numbers are, but yeah, there should be machines appearing in the first year of production.
Actually, Jason, I have a follow-up question on that, a curiosity.
Mhm.
Never asked you about this. When we have the production units or the factory units before production, let us say it that way. So the ones that would be owned by the company and doing the flight tests and all that. I believe you said there would be quite a few of them. Can you remind how many, and what are your plans of using those? Actually, that's a curiosity that I have. Any of those flights are going to be done outside of the UK, only in the UK? I know the test flights of the extreme weather conditions for sure,
Mhm.
but the general flights, as you said, the prototype permissions, how does that
So
work?
we've registered 5 prototype machines. So these are the machines that will go through the various stages of the test flying campaign and eventually arrive at what we call a fully production conforming machine, a production build standard. Beyond that, we'd intended to build a small number of machines, somewhere between 10, possibly as many as 25, for use in training. So primarily for use at the training school in the UK, and probably positioning some of those in other places around the world as necessary. But we haven't finalised those plans yet. The primary purpose of those machines is to support the amount of type ratings, the amount of training we need to do, the amount of training we'll need to do for examiners and instructors around the world, to support flight demonstrations in various territories, and of course also to get a number of machines through the factory here before we start building customer machines.
Excellent.
Misha, go ahead. I asked my question. Go ahead. Yeah.
No, it's very good. And
That's my
Merson is
question.
asking, a question regarding avionics screens. It is cool. It is it the user interface program, or is the user interface program using Qt framework or some other? Which program language is it using? Is it C++ or something different?
So the platform that we build the user interface on is a DISTI package. The name escapes me now. It's I think it's GL Studio that we use, and there is both a commercial version of that and also a version capable of producing fully certified interfaces. And then we have two tracks at the moment. One track that uses a fully certified software stack, so something like, for example, a Pike OS and from Cisco, and then a Core AVI graphics driver, and then we have an alternative track that we're developing at the moment, which is likely to be where we go, where we've got an internal proprietary approach to the software with a very clever monitor function that validates everything that comes out of that screen. So there's two ways that we're doing it. We're doing it the conventional certified way, and we also have a sort of monitor system approach as well, which is likely to be what makes it to production.
Okay, Sean would like to have an idea of when the MID 200 serial number will be built based on the shared timeline.
So that's about just after halfway through the first year of production, isn't it? So mid 26, mid 27, yeah.
Mid 27, yeah. Okay. And Jonathan's asking, will you allow for franchises and maintenance services globally?
Yeah, we absolutely, we are almost certainly going to use third-party maintenance providers around the world. So the exact details on that will be pushed out, as we said, in around a year's time. But we welcome applications from capable, experienced maintenance operators with a proven track record. We want those guys to succeed with us, not in spite of us.
Robert would like to have more details on in this process, when you're expecting the permit to fly to be issued and also the certification.
So we expect the permit to fly to be issued around 12 months after the first flight. And that's based on timescales. It's dependent on us doing everything that the CAA have asked for and for doing it properly, but that's based on the dialogue that we've been having with the CAA since 2017. So there is a large amount of margin in the time that we've allowed there. So we're robust about the permit to fly. I would still allow a further 2 years after the issue of the permit to fly for the full type certificate. And then that initial type certificate will be pushed around the world after that.
Okay. And Amy's asking a great question. Says, hi guys, we are wondering what the plans are for getting FAA allowance to fly the experimental HX50 over densely populated areas and for VFR night flights that is not currently allowed under or the FAA 14 CFR 91.319 for experimental aircrafts. And thanks again. Congratulations on progress.
Yeah, this is exactly the same situation in the UK. Essentially, there's a massive difference between what's traditionally considered to be an experimental and what we're developing here. What we're developing here is an aircraft that fully complies with the latest amendment of the Part 27 airworthiness regulations. It's got an engine that fully complies with the latest amendment of the Part E or Part 33 engine regulations, built by a company that is a design-approved organisation and a production-approved organisation, and subject to all of the same production and design controls as a fully type certified aircraft. For that reason, we will be able to get both night VFR and all of the same provisions as any Part 27 aircraft. But that will be dealt with in different ways in different territories. So in some territories, like in the UK, those permissions would just be attached to the permit to fly, and that's similar for most of the European countries. In the US, it might be covered by either an exemption or attached to the airworthiness certificate, or dealt with by a slightly different route through the approvals process. We've got a number of options. But again, I can't put the cart before the horse. Let me set the precedent in the UK, and then we'll develop that through all the other jurisdictions. But you can't treat HX50 as a traditional experimental. This is not a kit plane built in a barn.
Very well put.
Okay. I think we just lost Ruben there for a quick second, but Or do we have you back now? I'll just ask the next question. Next question's coming. With your 1,000 plus orders, what percentage of those orders are based in the USA? And I can answer that. It's about just coming up on 400 orders now that are based in the USA. So it's a very big margin there. And then,
in fairness, let me just say something there, Misha.
Sure.
That's actually about a third, and traditionally the US is about a third of the global helicopter market. So our sales are consistent with every other manufacturer's. There's no surprises.
We're reaching 40%, by the way.
Yeah. Okay.
Reaching
So
40%.
perhaps a little bit more there.
Yeah. Good. And Harald is asking, will you be resuming, Jace, will you be resuming your weekly updates that you've been doing?
Yes. Yes, I will. So obviously all attention recently has been to do with PC1 and then this update that we've just done. There's a huge backlog of technical stuff that I need to go and film and communicate. So we will be pushing lots more updates out through the app to keep you fully abreast of where we are on the technical program. And I will be getting back to weekly ones. It'll probably be just a little bit longer than weekly on the run up to Christmas, just because I've got such a mountain of technical things to get done to keep us on track. But as soon after that, it'll drop back onto the weekly ones. And what I would say is that from a communication point of view to the customer base through the app, what you can expect as we get into end of Q1, Q2 next year, we'll start the next purple patch like we had on the run up to Duxford, where there will be that much going on in PC1 that there'll be something new to see every day. And so in addition to the more focused updates, I'll be able to literally just walk around with my iPhone and take a little picture or take a little video of something really interesting or really cool and just squirt that over the app as little tidbits to keep people fully connected with what we're doing. But there's only so much plasterboard that you can look at, and so we've obviously been really consumed with getting this place up and running, and that's consumed a lot of attention from everybody. But we'll be back to business as normal shortly.
Okay. Particular question from Thomas. He's asking, Jason, excellent and inspirational work. Well done. If you pay the deposit now and secure the current price, does that deposit have an expiry date? For example, if you wanted to pay the deposit now and pay the balance and take delivery in several years, will this be possible? So I think he's asking about delay second payment, and we have an answer for that for sure. JC, you want to cover that?
Yeah,
so
we
for
can.
Some reason,
We can do that. So you would be allocated a serial number at this point, because that's the way we operate. But if you weren't in a position to take up your slot, we could essentially move you to the end of the queue at that point, or you could choose to allocate a out of sequence slot at some point down the road if that works better for you. All of those things we've done before for customers. So yeah, you can reserve a slot and get in line now. You can reserve a later slot and give yourself a period of time to work to now. Or if you're for any reason want to delay that later, obviously it's never going to be difficult to sell the next slot in line the day before, is it? So we can work with that.
And it's worth mentioning too, if you're securing a spot with a deposit right now, you are securing, like you say, that serial number and also the price, the discounted pricing right now. And so that position will actually continue to gain in value. So if you got to a point where you said, you know what, I need to delay my position, you would most definitely be able to trade with somebody else that has a later serial number and probably charge a premium on that. So there's a financial benefit for that as well. So next question is coming from Joseph. And it says, in the future, will the HX50 be able to become a certified aircraft? So essentially transferring to a HC50.
I think at the moment you should assume not. No, a HX will always be a HX. It's a complicated subject and there's lots of moving parts there. So no, although the machines will be technically identical. One of the realities is because you've got approval programs that are out of sync, It might be that there are some subtle changes with the build standard that are required by findings later on in the certification process that gives you then a slightly different build specification. So it would be complicated, let's just put it that way. So I'd just bank on not being able to do that at the moment.
Okay, Nej Kodrik is asking, I think we have to correct, but there's a little bit of a misunderstanding of the date. I'll correct that, but then it will make sense. The question will make sense with this slight correction. So he says, so if I can understand correctly, production starts in December 2025. No, that's not the case. It's December 2026. Production capacity in year one will be 450. That is correct. Does that mean that in year 2026, no, 2027, orders up to number to 450 will be produced and delivered? So the question is, 450 aircraft will be produced. So do you expect that serial number to be delivered end of the first year, which is, what would be, Jason, end of 2027, correct?
Yeah, that is the target. As I said, if the demand continues to grow, then we may change that, and it is subject to the details of the ramp-up rate that we're doing as well. But that is the target that we're working to at the moment, yes.
Okay. Next question is from Oliver, and it says, for the HX50, can I do my own maintenance, or do I need to be a certified aircraft engineer? That's a really good question that's come up in the past as well.
Yeah, our advice on that has always been this machine warrants and needs proper maintenance. And what the regulators will say to me is you can't have your cake and eat it. You know, technically you can maintain an experimental if you're the person that's built it, but you then can't have all the benefits that come with, or the privileges that come with a properly maintained and a properly approved aircraft. So we're working hard to keep the cost of parts and maintenance down on the aircraft, so it's not a punitive, it's not a significant part of the cost of running the overall cost of owning an aircraft for a private pilot, private owner. So just assume that you're going to need proper approved maintenance.
All right, quick question from Sprague, and I can answer that, is what is the total number of sales for HX50 and HC50? So the HX50 has right now 947 orders, and the HC50 376. The next question for you, Jace, is any update on financing options, expected terms?
So at the moment, the terms that we've been offered, and this was actually about 2 years ago, were basically the same terms that you'd get from any of the providers. So generally a reasonably large deposit, 20%, 30%, and then 5 or at the extreme 7-year terms. We'll work to improve those, but again, we really haven't done anything with that yet. It is really important to our business plan to make this as accessible to everybody, and I'll be looking at a model that essentially ties together power by the hour payment for maintenance and insurance and the cost of a lease or hire purchase payment into a simple monthly payment, but that's way down the line. Let's get it into production first.
Okay. The next question is one that I think we'll just have a simple, quick answer. So I'll ask 2 in a row here. But in case of an emergency, a collision from another aircraft or something like that, would it be possible to have an eject seat that goes out the side of the helicopter? So you can answer that. And then the next question will be, will there be pop-out floats for the HX50 with wheels?
No and yes. So it's ejection seats have been tried before and done with some limited success. It's way too complicated to contemplate, and it's just not. It's not something we consider practical for a helicopter of this size. It's not something I'm interested in pursuing. In terms of pop-out floats, absolutely, they're on the options list. We've got a preliminary design scheme for them now. Our new undercarriage specialist will be picking them up as soon as the final details on the wheeled and skidded undercarriage are done and ready for testing. So they're imminent now. They'll be there. Don't worry, you won't be left out.
Carl's going to be very happy to hear details on that.
I'm going to introduce Carl to the new undercarriage guy.
Excellent.
Nek Kudriak is asking the following. Jason, you did some expos recently. What was the feedback you received from other manufacturers like Bell, Airbus, etc.?
They were all very politely positive. So I had a lovely conversation with Kurt Robinson and with David Smith. They're very, very courteous. They were they were lovely about the product. They find it very interesting. I didn't speak to the guys from Bell directly, but I know the UK sales rep quite well. I think the overwhelming consensus is that there is clearly a very important place for the product in the market, and it's having an impact on the market. But they recognise that we still have a lot of work to do, and so we'll just get on with the work, and the market will make its decisions. So everybody's being polite and courteous. And there are some changes in behaviours out in the industry that would suggest we're having an impact and making people think about the way they operate.
Very good. Well said. So Rowan has gotten a really good question. It says, "Hey Misha, Jason, and Ruben, how many items on the program in the program are areas that are on or close to the critical path for those key dates? What should we expect to keep an eye on over the next 1 to 2 years? Thanks again for the update. It's such a massive undertaking."
That's a very good question. I think just in terms of the sheer amount of little bits of detail that we've got to get finished, both in terms of design detail and production process detail. At the moment, watch the engine. I'm putting a lot more time and effort personally into the engine than the aircraft. So getting the combustion system finished, getting the final blade casting process right, and then just making the sheer number of super precision parts that we've got to make with all the different stages of all the different processes that we have to do is the thing that's driving the program at the moment. If I just got the aircraft to do, it would be a relatively easy run between now and Christmas. I think avionics and electrical system are in a really good position. I think there's the main thing really is the final push to get the engine over the line, which I'm really comfortable about. It's just working through the amount of things that we've got left to do to be confident it's going to do what we want it to do with the minimum amount of modifications and fighting with it on the bench. And then the other thing that's a challenge just from a practical point of view is because we make a fuselage that's molded, every little detail of everything that needs to be included, both in terms of standard fit and options, needs to be built into those tools. So we're leaving finalizing those tools to the last possible minute so that we don't miss anything and then have to end up modifying the tools on the fly. So it's the things that attach to the major systems that attach to the fuselage and a few of the options are driving the point that we can say, right, that's enough, cut those tools, and then the engine. Those are the two things, quite honestly. And within the engine, the only thing, there's two things that I'm particularly interested in myself personally. Turbine blade casting, we will today, I don't know if it's arrived today, it'll either be today or tomorrow, receive the casting machine we've been waiting for forever. So we can do every stage of blade casting in-house at that point. That's one of the technical updates I'm going to be giving. And that means we can literally 10x the rate at which we can iterate the blade casting process. So I don't expect that'll take us too much longer because we've got the kit here now. And it's little things like that we just need to get over the line.
Nice.
Very good. Next question has a lot of detail. So in the videos, I noticed that the collective looks a little bit too much in the forward position, making the interaction more complicated. Is it my wrong impression? Also, will really the iPhone charge be in the cockpit? And if yes, will it be secured to avoid flying around in turbulence?
The collective position is great. If you come and have a go in the aircraft, you'll see that for yourself. Prior to producing the design of the updated fuselage, we've done a complete root and branch review of all of the ergonomics with all of the feedback from Duxford and Heli Expo, and we've tweaked a couple of small things, but the general position of the flight controls it's really good and it's really comfortable. The whole instrument panel and seating position and the controls, that whole unit bodily has moved back slightly to make access slightly better, to make it easier to get into the front seats. It also improves the downward view angle as well. So there's been a few refinements that have gone into the new fuselage, as well as the slight increase in headroom that you've got here as part of the updated A surface. But in terms of the collective and the cyclic positions relative to the pilots, they're really well positioned, and we have done an awful lot of work to make sure that that's the case.
Excellent. And Daniel's asking a question here. What's the difference between the HX and HC50? I think the critical part of the question is, can I buy the HX50 through a business?
Yes, you can. So there's no material difference between the airframe, between the design of the machines, and any changes that are required late in the day by the certification program, if they have any bearing on safety, they'll be cascaded back down to the X's anyway. So the machines, you can treat them as totally identical. The only difference is their route to approval and the basis on which they're allowed to fly. So the X is a private machine that's put through permit to fly in the UK and Europe, or the experimental category in the US and territories that follow that regulatory framework, whereas the C is conventionally type certificated.
Johan is asking, are you going to be present at the European Rotors in November?
I don't plan to be at the moment, and at the moment we're not intending to do any more of the trade shows for the foreseeable future. We have a completely open door policy here at PC1, so anybody that wants to see the aircraft can book in and see them any week. You don't have to wait till 1 week in the year. The main benefit of the trade shows is so that the distributed supply chains of conventional manufacturers can meet and all be in the same place at the same time. We are the supply chain. We buy raw materials and send helicopters out the front door. So there's no benefit to those shows for us. And our sales and marketing machine works perfectly effectively without those traditional methods. So we welcome you here at the factory. If you want to see the aircraft, book in and come and see us. If you want to see the development, book in and come and see us. If you want to meet the team, book in and come and see us. And you can do that all year round.
Hey, we have a trade show every single day.
We do. We're busy boys.
Every Wednesday. That's exactly right. And no ad hoc tours, Jason. It's just every Wednesday. It's
every Wednesday.
A scheduled tour. Michael's asking. Exactly. Michael is asking, is it maritime compliant? Can you land it on a vessel?
Yeah, there's a little bit more to it than that, but yes, right from the outset, one of our very early customers had a background in helicopter operations on yachts. So we've got a very comprehensive corrosion protection scheme as standard with all the aircraft. It's got the necessary tie downs, and there'll be specific procedures and equipment for the marinized version.
All right, Juliana has a very, very important question. We see that there are quite a few owners that are going to flight school in order to be able to receive and fly the HS50.
Yep.
This means a lot of new pilots who are naturally more prone to accidents and incidents and accidents. Have you thought about this, and how is this going to affect the company's image, if so, and the insurance cost?
So yes, we've thought about this a lot. And HX50 is designed from the ground up for inexperienced, infrequently flying amateur private pilots. So we've designed a machine that has all of the attributes necessary to make it easy to fly, to minimize the workload, and to make it as forgiving as possible. If we start at the top, we've got a high inertia, 3-bladed main rotor system that's docile in turbulent conditions. If you had an engine failure, the RPM is slow, relatively slow to decline, and provides lots of inertia so that the RPM changes as you maneuver are relatively gentle, and then you've got lots of stored energy at the bottom of the autorotation. In terms of the power, we've got an enormously powerful aircraft that means that all of your approaches to and from confined areas and general handling are just easier because you're always carrying power in hand. Every single, in terms of confined areas as well, each of the machines has a ducted fan tail rotor, so you're much less likely to have a large bird strike in flight or to be able to stick the tail rotor into something while operating in confined areas. The airframe itself meets all of the latest standards in terms of impact resistance and crashworthiness. So it has crashworthy fuel cells, high energy absorbing landing gear. The interior is designed to protect the cabin occupants. It's got crashworthy seats, and it's also got bird resistant windshields, which isn't a requirement for machines of this size and seating capacity, but we've elected to adopt the Part 29 transport category requirements to make sure that we provide the highest levels of safety to our pilot population. And then on top of that, with the digital cockpit, we've made flying VFR helicopters easier and simpler than ever before. And with the 2-axis or 4-axis autopilot, the machines are inherently stable. And so in the event of operating inadvertently in IMC conditions, it will give you the stability that will give you the time to think and to get yourself back out of it before gravity takes over and you find yourself in a mess. So this whole machine is designed as a piece of engineering with these exact people in mind. Now, on top of that, we're going to provide extensive training for everybody. So the type rating will cover all of the necessary areas that it needs to make sure you can operate your machine properly and safely. The build school will make sure you have a far greater knowledge of the systems of the aircraft than is typical for new pilots that are picking up another type for the first time. And then, of course, with our active safety management system, we will be monitoring the aircraft, and we will be monitoring how the aircraft is flown for every single flight hour that it ever flies. And if we start to see patterns of behavior, be it flying at the wrong height, flying bad profiles, flying in the dead man's curve, flying in bad weather, all of those sorts of things that will inevitably lead to an accident, we can intervene and suggest that people take some corrective training before that pattern of behavior ends up as an accident statistic. So we're doing absolutely everything we can to make sure people's transition into the helicopter world and helicopter ownership is as smooth and simple and safe and enjoyable as is humanly possible.
Fantastic. Really good comprehensive answer. Thanks, Jace, for that. Berlin is asking a fairly simple question, so it's just a slight correction on the question. So the question says, you mentioned that at 120 knots with full tank of fuel, so it's actually 140 knots with a full tank of fuel, at an altitude of 10,000 feet, you would be able to fill up the tank. Is that with 5 people on board, or do you have to limit your weight if you're going to fill up the tank?
No, so the basic mission for HX50 is 5 95 kilo passengers, some bags, 3 hours of fuel, and then to be able to fly along at 140 knots. So that's if you want to take a group of rugby players away and fly for 3 hours with some overnight bags, you can. If you're going to go a family, or you're going to go boy, girl, you'll most likely be able to fill the fuel tank up to the top. But filling the fuel tank up won't let you fully fill the normal weight of the seats, simply because we've designed it, rather than needing a separate auxiliary tank that's expensive, you've just got the massive tank as standard, but it won't be normal if you're filling all the seats to fly around with 5 hours of fuel. That's 5 hours of fuel it's a 3.5 rugby player helicopter, or it's boy girl for people of normal weight.
question is asking, you mentioned 500 hours for favorable insurance rating. Does that pertain only to helicopters, or can fixed wing time be part of that?
I think insurance is not my area, so I don't have the risk ratings off the top of my head. But I think any experience aviating will certainly count towards a reduced risk rating, because once you've learned how to wobble the sticks, these machines fly the same. We all fly in the same airspace. We all have to do the same thing. So any experience as an aviator will count, but you will still have to have sufficient proficiency as a helicopter pilot to qualify for really inexpensive insurance. But again, don't get me wrong, the insurance across the board will be significantly more cost effective than what we've been used to.
Yeah, excellent. And for the sake of time, just to get through these, the next one is from Michael. It says, will there be a simulator for training? Yes, the answer is yes, and I'll just ask the next one right away as well. So Remo is asking, hi Jason, I ordered 2 HX50s. I'd like to keep one in Switzerland and one in the US. I'm a CFI helicopter instructor. Can I teach other owners with my experimental helicopter? Thanks.
It's a complicated question, but you should be able to, based on the discussions we've had to date with the authorities. There's a lot of detail to do, so please don't assume that. Don't buy a helicopter on the basis of that. But we are working towards that being a possibility. And again, that is all because the machine is essentially fully compliant with the latest airworthiness standards.
James is asking, what is this I keep hearing about the HC80 with dual GT50s?
I don't know. You tell me. So building what we've built here, I've said a few times before, isn't just an aircraft. What we've built here is a platform. It's an ability to make many types of GA aircraft, both rotary wing and fixed wing. We have the engines, we have the transmissions, we have the structures, we have the avionics, and over the course of many years we'll develop a wide variety of light aircraft to really enable GA to thrive again. HC80 is the likely next product, but I really don't want to say any more about it than that at the moment. We make a 500 horsepower turbine engine. I believe there might be a market for a twin GT50 powered helicopter in that sort of weight class. So watch this space. At the moment, I don't want to dilute the focus on HX50. Let's just get the first one done, into service, working reliably, satisfied customers, and then we can go back to inventing again after that.
Exciting future things to come. That's all we'll say. Jack is asking, you briefly covered buyers working on the engine, but will you let the buyer put their name on the assembly so that they can overhaul the engine, or will Hill be the builder, making certification, mechanics, repair stations, the only permitted overhaul personnel?
The engine, nobody's touching the engine, so the engine will be handled very carefully by us. So I assure you that won't be expensive. The whole business model is making aviation attainable, but there are so many super tight tolerances in those engines. There's so many things in there that would be really easy to make a mess of, that we don't need the engine being messed with by people that don't have the necessary equipment, facilities, training, expertise. So the engine will be almost certainly handled by us directly.
And something that you've mentioned in the past, I'm just asking it as a question now again, for at least the beginning portion, it's most likely going to be that there won't be overhauled engines, it'll just be replacement engines. Is that still the case?
Just assume that for now, and again, there won't be a cost impact on the clients. There'll be they'll be powered by the hour maintenance and parts programs that follow on from the warranties. So these helicopters will never attract big unexpected or big calendar bills, and we will look after the management of parts for people. So all of the major modules are likely to come back to us. We'll just give you a service exchange, keep you flying it immediately. You're not waiting for months for parts to come back. You just send the old one back to us, put the new one on, and away you go.
Fantastic. And before the next question, just to give you a heads up, today we're going to be closing at 45 past the hour. It has been probably the longest Q&A session ever, and we have a lot of questions, but we're going to be closing in about 5 minutes. Next one is, what SOI is the FADEC developed with the EASA?
The FADEC is being developed exclusively with the UK CAA at the moment, so that's not a relevant question. We'll get to our EASA later. We need to establish a certification basis here in the UK first. It will be a much faster process that way.
Okay, next question is a quick one. How many hours are included with the checkout for the HX50? So how many flight hours will you be doing?
What, for the type rating?
For the type rating,
so
yeah.
It's 5 plus an hour's test, so 6.
Okay, next one, very quick and objective. How many flying helicopters will be manufactured before production starts?
As a minimum, I would expect 15 flying ones, and then obviously lots of subsystems as well. As a minimum, I would say 15.
15. 1-5. Okay. Excellent. And this has been asked many times before, so quick answer. Jason, did you ever think about implementing an emergency parachute in the helicopter?
I thought about it, but I'm not convinced it's a terribly good idea. A helicopter comes down slower in auto-rotation than it would if it was attached to a parachute. When you're designing an aircraft that you want to fly very quickly in forward flight, then the cowling around the mast and the packaging around the rotor hub is really important to keep the drag down. So in our application, where cruise speed is really important, anything that makes that lump on the top of the helicopter bigger or more bulbous will seriously impact our ability to deliver our core mission, which is pick yourself up from your back garden, fly somewhere exciting and land there. And so it really doesn't suit our mission needs. And by the time you start looking at more elaborate ways of doing it, with letting the blades go and releasing it, it just gets so complicated that I genuinely don't believe it's worth the hassle. I think it's a nice idea, but I don't think it's worth it.
Practical.
Auto rotation is incredibly effective, and for the very rare time that you're going to need it. So,
and it's not difficult, right? Auto rotation is not a difficult thing to do. It's not a difficult thing to get into. A helicopter's flight dynamics are actually better in auto rotation than they are in powered flight, right? It's a really nice state of flying. So people just need to get comfortable with the idea of needing to get good at it. And that should be part of any good flight training and any good flight currency program. So let's just help people get really good at that. Let's design a machine itself that's really efficient at that, and you've got the best compromise. And then in terms of the rotor banging into things, the rotor will be designed to be bird strike tolerant. We've cowled all of the pitch links and the rotor hub itself, so the chance of something hitting really important is completely minimized. And you know, I think that gives you the optimal safety balance, not assuming that everything's rubbish and it's going to fail and put a parachute on the top.
Exactly.
All right,
Okay.
before the next question, there's one that is sales related. I'll answer that quickly. Where can I get the XC50 or the XC50? So as Misha shared, it's very simple. You can enroll for one of our daily presentations that Misha and I do. We go over all the program, the aircraft, the pre-order conditions. If you don't have time for that, we also have something new, which is a self-catered platform where you can watch and record the presentation by chapters on our webpage. You just have to choose that option when you enroll for the presentation, and you can go at your own pace, have all the information that you need, skip the ones that you're not interested on, and then also have the link for pre-ordering and the existing current price and existing stock at that price as well. So you have those two options. Next question is, as you progress to production, do you see the fundamental base cost of the helicopter escalating? And if so, by what percentage?
So as we continue to go through development, we will always adjust the aircraft price. So as we go into production and beyond, we will be adjusting the aircraft base price for inflation. And as we approach towards production, we will also be increasing the base price to reflect market conditions and the value proposition that we offer. So again, there's no time like the present. If you want to lock in the current price, buy it now. The price will go up, but again, I will just balance that by saying the whole point of HX50 is that it remains an accessible GA helicopter. We're never going to escalate the price to a point that it stops that mission, because that's the whole point of it. But prices have to go up because of inflation, and the price of HX50 has always been downplayed to enhance its value proposition in the early days, and we haven't yet reached its natural resting point.
Okay. Before I ask my next question, just a funny side note. I just got an email from Amy saying thank you for clarifying that we don't do ad hoc tours. We are more than welcome more than happy to welcome you every Wednesday at the factory. And I encourage you, if you guys want to see the factory and see everything that's going on, it's very exciting there right now. Definitely book in. You can just contact us, and we do those scheduled tours. So we'd be more than happy to show you around and get to meet some of the engineers and see the helicopter in person and everything. So we're just coming to the end of the time. I'm going to ask my last question, then Ruben's going to ask his. But from my end, thank you everybody for taking the time to join us today. It was really wonderful to have all your guys' questions, see all your guys' comments, and to be here with you guys as part of this community. So next question, last one for me, is how much lifting power will the helicopter have, Jason? And will it have a cargo hook available?
It will have a cargo hook, and it has substantial lifting power. So the external gross weight will be at least 1,800 kilos. It might be a little bit more than that, but we're going to wait until we've proven that on test. You should expect it to lift at least 900, maybe a little bit more kilos as an external load.
Nice.
It's
Fantastic.
It's a very modern rotor system, and it's a very powerful engine.
All right, and this was not planned. Actually, the next question roll is a great way to end the Q&A session. And it's a challenge for you, Jason. And I'd like to hear from you directly how you're going to answer this one, because you just express things in such a clear way and articulate that you leave no doubt. So the question is from Kumar, and again, this was not planned. It's question 88, and it's a great way to end today's AMA. Guys, as the first-time buyer, can you give me a feedback on what's on the big pro side in terms of trusting Hill for my first purchase? I'm considering buying an AC-50. So that's for you, Jace. Why should I trust Hill for my first purchase?
Why should you trust Hill? I think there's two things to say there. Firstly, at this stage, coming to the party at this point, you're in the company of people, literally 1,000 people, that have been in the helicopter industry for decades in many cases. They've seen it all, they've done it all, they've owned lots of the other helicopters that are available, and something has propelled those people to come and join us to take a HX50. And the reason for that is the helicopter industry, the helicopter can be a lot more than it is today. And we've set out with one mission and one mission alone, and that's to design the perfect 5-seat helicopter for a private owner operator, something that's absolutely up to the moment. It's of 2024. It'll give you an amazing flying experience. It'll protect you to the greatest extent that today's technology can, and you will be one of the coolest people on the planet. And to have a machine that delivers all of that, and to have these really qualified peers within the customer group that aren't first-time buyers. You know, we've pulled people out of everything from 22s and gimbals all the way up to A-Stars 407s and Augusta 109s, because the helicopter that you buy isn't related to your mission when it comes to private owner operators. It's often just related to the depth of your pockets and how cool a helicopter you can afford to have as a toy. And all of these people have chosen to come and purchase a HS50, and it's because it really delivers on what private owner operators need and want. And it has the capability of bringing the whole idea of being a part of general aviation back to life again. So I'd say you can make your own judgment about whether you think I'm technically competent and commercially competent to deliver this. But remember, as I said in the video at the start, we started with a blank sheet of paper, and now here we are with the machine behind me and the machine that makes the machine behind that. And we've got a lot of work to do to systematically now go through and finish and qualify every component that goes into that machine to make sure that each example is perfect when it leaves the factory. But we'll execute that. That's just work. And the rest is really just down to your own risk-reward threshold. You can come and join us now and be closer to the front of the queue, or you can leave it and come back when all the risk and doubt has been pushed out of the program by the 1,300 people or so that are already in front of you.
All right, what a great way to end this session today. A lot of things were shared. We're looking forward to the next 12 months. As Jason said, it's going to be phenomenal. And thank you very much, everyone, for attending today. We had almost 2,000 people connecting from literally all over the world. I do have an announcement to share. Next AMA is going to be on the 5th of December this year. There's going to be the last one. And it's going to be very technical. As Jason's also mentioned, we have a lot of things to showcase there, and he's going to be giving a lot of much more details in that session of how everything is coming together on the build of the helicopter. Thank you again. Have an excellent day, afternoon, evening, whatever you are in the world.
Thanks a lot for your time and attention, guys, and thanks again for all the support you're showing for the program.
Good day.